Siobhan Olivero, and today we're going to talk about Miranda warnings. I posted on my social media pages on this past Friday about the Miranda warnings and some questions that I generally get asked about Miranda itself. Specifically, can my case be thrown out if Miranda wasn't read to me? So I thought we'd do a video on it and flesh that out a little bit more and talk about it more in depth. So let's start first with what are Miranda warnings. We're all familiar with Miranda from those TV shows like Law and Order, where cops read to us, you have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law, and you have the right to have an attorney. And if you can't afford one will be appointed to you. It's important to note on that, the word and the phrasing of anything you say can and will be used against you. And I want to highlight the will be used against you. If you make a statement to law enforcement, you can be rest assured that your statement will be used against you in court. So when will the statement be used against you? It's important to note when Miranda has to be read. It has to be read to you when you're in custody, meaning that you have been arrested or you're in custody for a crime that they are investigating, that they are alleging you have committed. And then it's whether or not they're going to question you. Miranda doesn't have to be read just because you're in custody. It does have to be read to you if they're going to question you and ask you to make any statements about the crime that you're in custody for. Then that's when Miranda has to be read to you. If you make statements about a crime that you are not arrested for, so for instance, you start talking and another crime comes up and you're not in custody for that, Miranda will not apply to that crime. And those statements may or may not be used against you later, but we'll save that for another video down the road. So if you're in custody and you're going to make statements, Miranda has to be read. So what happens if Miranda isn't read to you? Which is the biggest question that I get asked. Miranda wasn't read to me, can my case be thrown out? And my next question is, well, did you make any statements to law enforcement? If the answer is no, then no, your case isn't going anywhere because Miranda is specifically about statements you made to law enforcement. If you made statements and they did not read you Miranda warnings, then what happens? Well, typically what will happen is if they were incriminating statements and Miranda was not read to you and the judge finds that Miranda was not read to you and you were in custody, then those statements will not be used against you in trial. Does that necessarily throw your case out? Not necessarily. There could be other evidence that law enforcement has that the state may be able to use to prove their case. If the basis solely is your statements, then there's other considerations that will take into play on whether or not your case gets thrown out. But it doesn't necessarily get your case thrown out of court. It just prevents those statements from being used against you in the case that you're charged with. So I hope that answered your questions about Miranda, and tune in next time when we'll answer more questions that I get frequently asked.